I picked out this story just for you. Let's listen to it.
Chapter 1. Beneath the Ice. The wind howled across the frozen wasteland of Creth, 7, carrying with it shards of ice that struck the viewport of the subterranean access tunnel like microscopic bullets. Vex Thorn, the shadow hacker known throughout the Syndicate Collective as the man who could crack any system, breach any firewall, steal any secret, pressed his palm against the frost-rimed wall and felt the distant vibration of the mining operation far below. His breath crystallized in the air before him, each exhalation a small cloud that dissipated into nothing. 3 hours. He had been standing in this godforsaken trench for 3 hours, waiting for the signal that would tell him the ancient data vault beneath the ice was ready to be breached. The Syndicate wanted what lay buried here, coordinates to a cache of pre-collapse technology that could shift the balance of power throughout the sector. And Vex Thorn always delivered. His neural interface flickered with an incoming transmission, the signal piggybacking on a frequency most thought extinct. The voice that emerged in his skull was synthetic, measured, and utterly without warmth. Vex Thorn, your reputation precedes you. The Syndicate's finest digital architect, they say. A man who once emptied the Central Banking Consortium's reserve accounts in 17 seconds flat. Vex's eyes narrowed as he scanned the darkness around him. The trench stretched in both directions, carved into the ice by ancient machines whose purposes had long since been forgotten. Who is this? This frequency is supposed to be secure. Secure is a relative term. I am Drone 800, designated operative of the Ascendant Cult. I propose a collaboration. The words hung in the frozen air like a curse. The Ascendant Cult, zealots who believed in the merger of flesh and machine, who pursued psionic enhancement and bioengineering with a fervor that bordered on religious ecstasy. They were not natural allies of the Syndicate Collective, whose motivations were profit rather than transcendence. I don't work with cultists, Vex said, though his hand had already drifted to the modified datapad at his hip. Your kind have a habit of interpreting any outcome as proof of your divine mission. It makes for unreliable business partners. Then consider this. The vault you seek to breach contains more than coordinates. It holds the location of a weapon, one that could either elevate humanity to its next evolutionary stage or annihilate it entirely. The cult wishes to ensure the latter does not come to pass. Your employers wish to profit from the sale of such technology. Our interests for the moment align. Before Vex could respond, a new sound cut through the wind, a mechanical grinding, followed by the unmistakable impact of boots on ice. He pressed himself flat against the trench wall, his dark coat absorbing what little light filtered down from the distant surface. A figure was moving through the storm, moving with a purpose that suggested familiarity with this hostile environment. The figure that emerged from the whiteout was young, impossibly young, with a face that had not yet seen 20 standard years. But the eyes were old, and the muscles beneath the thermal suit rippled with a strength that seemed almost unnatural. This was a child of the free frontier, born to survival and hardship, raised in the tradition of independence and self-reliance. You're the hacker, the youth said. It was not a question. They said a Syndicate operative would be coming. I didn't believe them. Vex remained motionless, his mind racing through calculations. And who are you supposed to be? Kira Vance. The young woman's jaw set with a determination that bordered on obstinacy. They call me the prodigy. I'm here because my people need what's in that vault, and I'm told you're the only one who can open it. The free frontier? Vex's laugh was sharp and humorless. What could a bunch of backwater survivalists possibly offer me? The location of a second vault. One the Syndicate doesn't know about. One that contains technology far more valuable than coordinates. This gave Vex pause. He studied the young woman with renewed interest, his hacker's instincts cataloging every detail, the calluses on her hands, the way she moved with economical grace, the barely contained energy that seemed to radiate from her frame. She was strong, stronger than anyone had a right to be at her age. And she was clearly desperate. Let me guess, Vex said slowly. Your village is dying. Your people are starving or sick or under attack from some rival faction. And you believe this technology will save them. Kira's eyes flashed. The frontier doesn't beg, hacker. We trade. I'm offering you information that could make you wealthy beyond measure. All I'm asking in return is access to medical technology that could save thousands of lives. Your syndicate bosses don't need to know about that part. The synthetic voice of Drone 800 crackled through Vex's neural interface once more. I detect additional presences approaching from the north. Multiple heat signatures. Armed. Vex cursed under his breath. The trench suddenly felt like a trap, a narrow corridor of ice with no cover and no escape. He looked at Kira, then at the darkness beyond, and made a decision. You want to work together? Fine. But if you cross me, I'll make sure the only thing you find in that vault is your own grave. Kira grinned, and there was something fierce in that expression, something untamed and dangerous. Deal. Now move. They're coming. Chapter 2. The Hunters. The Elder Warrior moved through the storm with the patience of a predator who had spent decades learning the art of the hunt. His name was Therion Kade, and he had survived 47 winters on the frontier worlds, fought in 17 armed conflicts, and killed more men than he cared to count. The ice trench spread before him like the barrel of a gun, and somewhere in its depths walked the prey he had been sent to eliminate. His second-in-command, a weathered woman named Sarah, who had served under him for 12 years, moved at his flank. She carried a pulse rifle modified for cold weather operations, its barrel wrapped in thermal mesh to prevent the metal from becoming brittle in the extreme temperatures. Sir, she said quietly. Tracking indicates 3 contacts ahead. One matches the profile of the shadow hacker. The others are unknown. Therion grunted acknowledgement. His mission orders had been clear. The syndicate operative was to be prevented from reaching the vault at all costs. The technology buried beneath Kreth 7 was too dangerous to fall into the hands of profit-seekers and black marketeers. The Free Frontier had claimed this world generations ago, and the Elder Warrior intended to honor that claim. The young one, he said, his voice a low rumble that barely carried over the wind. The prodigy. She's frontier-born. What is she doing with a syndicate operative? Unknown, sir. But if she's compromised, then she's compromised. Therion's grip tightened on his weapon. The frontier doesn't tolerate traitors. If she's chosen to align with the enemy, she shares their fate. They moved forward in silence, 2 ghosts drifting through a world of white. The trench walls rose around them like the ribs of some ancient beast, and the temperature continued to drop as they descended deeper into the ice. Therion's breath came in short, controlled bursts, his body temperature regulated by the implants that all Elder Warriors received upon their ascension to the rank. He could feel his heart rate slowing, his senses sharpening, as the hunting instincts that had kept him alive through decades of conflict took control. The first trap was a simple one, a pressure plate concealed beneath a layer of frost, connected to a directional mine mounted on the western wall. Therion spotted the slight discoloration in the ice and raised his fist, signaling Sarah to halt. Amateur work, he muttered, carefully stepping around the trigger. Whoever set this was in a hurry. Or wanted us to find it, Sarah replied. A distraction. Therion nodded slowly. The shadow hacker was known for his cunning. It would not be unlike the man to create a deliberate trail of false clues, each one designed to lead pursuers away from his true path. But there was no other route to the vault. The trench was the only access point that had not collapsed in the millennia since its construction. Keep your eyes open, Therion said. And your weapon ready. They continued their descent, moving past the trap with the careful precision of veterans who had learned that haste was the surest path to an early grave. The ice walls seemed to press in around them, and the only sound was the crunch of their boots and the distant howl of the wind far above. Vex Thorn crouched behind a support strut, his fingers flying across the datapad as lines of code cascaded across the screen. Beside him, Kira shifted restlessly, her powerful frame coiled like a spring. How much longer? She whispered. As long as it takes. Vex did not look up from his work. The security grid protecting the vault entrance is layered with encryption I haven't seen since the central banking job. Whoever built this place was paranoid. The cult, came the synthetic voice of Drone 800 through Vex neural interface. Our ancestors constructed this facility during the early days of the Ascendants. The encryption protocols were designed by the first seers themselves. Helpful, Vex muttered. Any chance your cult kept a backdoor key lying around? The cult has no record of this facility's existence. It was purged from our archives during the schism 300 years ago. All I know of it comes from fragments recovered during data excavation operations. Kira leaned forward, her eyes scanning the darkness behind them. We've got company. I can hear footsteps on the ice. Vex cursed softly. He had hoped for more time. The vault entrance was less than 100 meters ahead, but the security grid would take at least another 15 minutes to crack. If the hunters caught up to them now, there would be no escape. Can you hold them off? He asked Kira. The young woman's grin returned, fierce and wild. I can do more than hold them off. I can make them wish they'd stayed home. Chapter 3. Convergence. The first shot caught Sarah in the shoulder, spinning her around and slamming her against the ice wall. Therion dropped to a crouch, his weapon up and tracking, but the shooter had already moved. He could hear the footsteps echoing through the trench, swift and deliberate. Report, he growled, pressing his palm against Sarah's wound to assess the damage. Still functional, she gasped, her face pale but her eyes clear. Armor absorbed most of it. I can fight. Stay behind me. Therion rose and moved forward, his pulse rifle sweeping the corridor. The trench curved ahead, creating a blind corner that could conceal an army. He had fought in enough urban engagements to know the dangers of advancing into unknown territory. A second shot rang out, and Therion felt the impact against his thigh, a glancing blow that punched through his thermal armor and buried itself in the muscle beneath. He grunted but kept moving, his training overriding the pain. The wound was not fatal. It would not even slow him significantly. But it told him something important about his opponent. The shooter was not aiming to kill. This gave him pause. An assassin who missed a kill shot was either incompetent or had other intentions. And the shadow hacker, the primary target, was not known for incompetence. Which meant this was a message, a warning designed to slow the pursuit. It was working. Sarah, Therion said quietly, we're being herded. The hacker is trying to buy time. Then we stop playing his game. Sarah pulled herself upright, her good arm cradling her weapon. There's a maintenance shaft approximately 50 meters back. It runs parallel to the main trench. We could flank them. Therion considered the option. The maintenance shaft would be narrow, dark, and potentially unstable. But it would also bypass whatever defensive positions the hacker had established. The element of surprise was worth the risk.
Do it.
I'll keep their attention here. Sarah nodded and began to move back the way they had come, her footsteps silent on the ice. Therion watched her go, then turned his attention to the darkness ahead. He had spent his life learning to read the battlefield, to understand the flow of combat like a river current. And right now, the current was pulling him towards something he could not yet see. He advanced slowly, his weapon ready, his senses attuned to every sound and movement. The trench walls seemed to close in around him, the darkness pressing against his vision like a physical weight. Somewhere ahead, the shadow hacker was working to open a vault that had remained sealed for centuries. And somewhere in that vault lay secrets that could reshape the galaxy. Therion Kade had sworn an oath to protect the frontier and its people. He would not fail that oath today. Vex's fingers trembled slightly as the final layer of encryption began to crumble. The code was elegant, complex, a masterpiece of paranoid design that had kept intruders at bay for generations. But nothing was truly unbreakable, not to a man who had spent his life learning the language of machines. Almost there, he muttered. Kira, status? The young woman was crouched behind a fallen support beam, her eyes fixed on the darkness behind them. She had not spoken since the last exchange of fire, and something in her posture had changed. The coiled energy was still there, but it was tempered now by caution. There's something wrong, she said quietly. The Elder Warrior, they call him Therion Kade. He's not just a soldier. He's a legend. My grandmother used to tell stories about him, about how he held a mountain pass against a syndicate invasion force for 3 days with nothing but a knife and a pulse pistol. He doesn't make mistakes. He doesn't get hurted. Vex paused, his hands hovering over the data pad. What are you saying? I'm saying if he wanted us dead, we'd be dead. He's playing a game we don't understand. Before Vex could respond, the security grid finally collapsed. The door ahead ground open, revealing a shaft that descended into the heart of the ice. A cold wind rose from below, carrying with it the scent of ancient machinery and forgotten secrets. We're in, Vex said. Time to go. Chapter 4. The Gateway. The transition from Kreth 7's frozen surface to the Gateway space station was jarring, a sudden shift from bitter cold to recycled warmth, from howling winds to the sterile hum of atmospheric processors. Vex stumbled as he emerged from the shuttle, his body still adjusting to the return of normal gravity after the brief orbital flight. Gateway Station was one of the oldest structures in the sector, a sprawling complex of docking bays, trading posts, and residential modules that served as a neutral meeting ground for all factions. Here, the Imperial Coalition rubbed shoulders with syndicate traders, free frontier merchants haggled with Ascendant Cult missionaries, Shadow Network operatives conducted business in the shadows of legitimate commerce. The vault beneath Kreth 7 had contained more than coordinates. It had held an entire archive of pre-collapse technology, including specifications for a transportation device that could move matter across interstellar distances without the need for conventional FTL drives. The implications were staggering, and every faction in the galaxy would kill to possess such technology. The coordinates point to a research facility in the Vela system, Drone 800's voice echoed through Vex's neural interface. That facility was thought destroyed during the collapse. If the archive is correct, it may still be operational. And the medical technology one need? Kira asked, falling into step beside Vex as they moved through the crowded station concourse. Her earlier confidence had given way to something more guarded, her eyes constantly scanning the crowds for threats. The archive contained references to medical nanotechnology capable of repairing cellular damage at the molecular level, Vex replied. Assuming the facility is intact, we should be able to recover both. Kira nodded slowly. And then what? You take your technology to the Syndicate, I take mine to the frontier, and we pretend we never met. That's usually how these things work. Right. The young woman's voice was flat. Just business. They moved in silence through the station, past vendors hawking their wares and travelers rushing to catch departing shuttles. The Gateway was a place of constant motion, a living organism composed of thousands of individual threads of commerce and communication. And somewhere in that web, the hunters were waiting. Therion Kade watched from a balcony overlooking the main concourse, his eyes tracking the movement of his quarry below. Sarah stood beside him, her wounded arm secured in a sling but her weapon still functional. They're heading for the transit hub, she reported. Likely planning to leave the station before we can intercept.
No.
Therion's voice was certain. They'll need to negotiate passage. The coordinates they recovered are useless, without a ship capable of reaching the Vela system. That means dealing with local traders. That means exposure. And when they're exposed? Therion smiled grimly. Then we move. The ambush came, without warning. Vex was in the middle of negotiating passage with a free frontier freighter captain when the first shot rang out, striking the bulkhead inches from his head. He dove for cover, his hand reaching for the data pad that contained the precious coordinates. Kira reacted with the speed of a born fighter, her powerful frame launching toward the source of the attack. She moved through the crowd like a force of nature, scattering panicked travelers in her wake. But Therion Kade was ready for her. The Elder Warrior stepped from the shadows of a nearby corridor, his pulse rifle tracking Kira's movement with practiced ease. He did not fire. Instead, he allowed himself a moment of assessment, studying the young woman's technique as she closed the distance between them. You have potential, he said calmly. Wasted on the wrong cause. I could say the same about you, Kira replied, her voice tight with exertion as she feinted left and drove a powerful right hook toward his midsection. Therion caught her fist in his palm, absorbing the impact with barely a flinch. The force of the blow was immense. Vex could see the Elder Warrior's arm shake slightly from the effort of blocking, but it was not enough to break his grip. "The frontier raised you," Therion said quietly. "Taught you to fight, to survive. And now you betray us for a syndicate operative." "I'm not betraying anyone. I'm saving my people." "By selling out to the highest bidder?" Therion's grip tightened. "That's not the frontier way." Vex watched the confrontation unfold, his mind racing through possibilities. He could run, the coordinates were secure, and there were a dozen ships in the station that could carry him to the Vela system. But something held him in place. Something he could not quite name. The Elder Warrior was not trying to kill Kira. He was trying to understand her. And in that understanding, Vex saw an opportunity. "Drone 800, he murmured into his neural interface. "I need options. I have analyzed the tactical situation. The Elder Warrior's position is strong, but his attention is divided. A coordinated diversion could create an opening for extraction." "What kind of diversion?" "The Gateway Station's life support systems are controlled by a central processor approximately 200 meters from your current position. If that processor were to experience a controlled malfunction, the resulting confusion would provide cover for escape." Vex considered the option. The station was crowded. Innocent civilians would be caught in any chaos he created. But the alternative was capture, or worse. Do it. Chapter 5. The web tightens. The lights flickered, then died. For a moment, the concourse was plunged into absolute darkness, the only illumination coming from the emergency strips along the floor. Then the backup generators kicked in, casting everything in a dim red glow that transformed the crowded space into something out of a nightmare. Vex moved. His fingers were already dancing across his datapad, overriding the station's security protocols and locking down the transit hub. Behind him, he could hear the sounds of chaos, screaming civilians, shouting security forces, the thunder of boots on metal grating. Somewhere in that confusion, Kira was still fighting for her life. He found her near the entrance to the docking bays, locked in desperate combat with the Elder Warrior. Despite her prodigious strength, Kira was losing. Therion Kade had decades of combat experience, and every move she made was countered with brutal efficiency. "Enough," Vex said, raising his voice over the chaos. "Elder Warrior, let her go, and I'll give you what you came for." Therion's head turned slightly, his eyes finding Vex in the dim light. "The coordinates?" "A copy. Untampered. You can verify them yourself." "And why would I trust a syndicate operative?" Vex allowed himself a thin smile. "You wouldn't. But you're a practical man. You know that fighting your way out of this station will cost time and resources. This way, everyone walks away with something." The Elder Warrior considered the offer, his grip on Kira never loosening. The young woman's face was twisted with fury and frustration, her body trembling with the effort of resisting. "The frontier does not negotiate with terrorists and criminals," Therion said finally. "But the frontier also values the lives of its children." He released Kira, shoving her away with enough force to send her stumbling. "You have your deal, hacker. But know this, if those coordinates lead to anything that threatens my people, I will find you. And there will be no negotiation next time." Vex transferred the data with a few quick gestures, then grabbed Kira's arm and pulled her toward the docking bays. Behind them, the Elder Warrior watched in silence, his expression unreadable. Chapter 6. The Final Trap. The research facility in the Vela system was a tomb. Vex stood in the entrance chamber, his breath fogging in the recycled air, and tried to process what he was seeing. The walls were lined with cryogenic pods, each one containing a figure frozen in stasis, scientists, technicians, soldiers, all preserved in the moment of their facility's abandonment. They looked like statues in a museum, monuments to a world that no longer existed. The transportation technology should be in the central lab, Drone 800 reported. Approximately 300 meters ahead. "I am detecting active power signatures. Some of the facility's systems are still operational." Vex nodded and moved forward, his footsteps echoing in the silent corridors. Kira walked beside him, her earlier bravado replaced by a somber quiet. The cryogenic pods seemed to weigh on her, a reminder of the cost of the technology they sought. The central lab was a vast chamber filled with machinery that defied easy description. In the center stood the transportation device, a ring of interlocking components that hummed with barely contained energy. Along the walls, storage lockers contained the medical nanotechnology Kira sought, their contents clearly labeled in pre-collapse script. "It's real," Kira breathed. "All of it. Everything the archive promised. Then let's get what we came for and get out." Vex moved toward the transportation device, his datapad already interfacing with its control systems. "I don't want to spend any more time in this mausoleum than necessary." The trap activated the moment his hand touched the control panel. Alarm lights blazed, and the cryogenic pods along the walls began to open. Vex spun, his heart hammering, as figures began to emerge from their frozen slumber, soldiers in pre-collapse combat armor, their movements stiff but purposeful, their weapons raised and tracking. "Defense protocol initiated," a mechanical voice announced. "Unauthorized access detected. Lethal response authorized." Vex's mind raced. The facility had been designed to protect its secrets at all costs, and the cryogenically preserved Guardians had been programmed to eliminate any intruder who triggered the defense systems. He had walked right into the trap, blinded by the promise of technological treasure. "Kira, get the medical supplies," he shouted, ducking behind a console as the first shots rang out. "I'll handle the defense system."
"How?"
"By doing what I do best." His fingers flew across the datapad, accessing the facility's network and searching for the control codes that would shut down the defense protocol. The encryption was formidable, but it was also familiar, similar to the security grid he had cracked on Creth 7. The same architects had designed both systems, and they had left the same vulnerabilities. The Elder Warrior emerged from the shadows of the entrance, his weapon raised. He had followed them. Of course he had followed them. And now he stood between Vex and escape, his expression grim and determined. "Your coordinates led us here," Therion said. "But I did not expect this." "You think I did?" Vex snapped, still working. "The whole place is a death trap. Help me disable it, or we all die." For a long moment, the Elder Warrior did not move. His eyes swept the chamber, assessing the tactical situation with the precision of a lifetime of combat. The cryogenic soldiers were advancing, their weapons firing in disciplined bursts. Kira was pinned behind the medical lockers, unable to reach the supplies she needed. "Your hacker skills," Therion said finally. "Can you turn the defense system against itself?" "I can try, but I need time." "Then you will have it." The Elder Warrior moved forward, his pulse rifle barking as he engaged the advancing soldiers. His aim was precise, each shot finding its mark with deadly accuracy. He fought like a man possessed, a master of his craft performing at the absolute peak of his ability. Vex worked. The encryption peeled away layer by layer, revealing the core programming beneath. The defense protocol was sophisticated, but it was also ancient, designed in an era before the shadow hackers' techniques had been developed. It was vulnerable if one knew where to look. And Vex knew. With a final flourish, he executed the override command. The cryogenic soldiers froze in place, their weapons lowering as the defense protocol disengaged. The mechanical voice spoke once more. "Defense protocol deactivated. Authorized access granted. Welcome, designated user." Vex slumped against the console, his breath coming in ragged gasps. Kira emerged from cover, the medical supplies clutched in her arms, her face radiant with relief.
"We did it," she said.
"We actually did it." Therion Kade lowered his weapon, his eyes finding Vex across the chamber. There was no warmth in that gaze, but there was something else, respect, perhaps, or acknowledgement. "You are more than a common thief," the Elder Warrior said quietly. "You have earned your prize today, Shadow Hacker. But remember my warning. The technology you carry is dangerous. Use it wisely." Vex straightened, tucking the datapad with the transportation specifications into his coat. "And you, Elder Warrior, are more than a simple soldier. Until next time." Therion nodded once, then turned and walked back into the shadows from which he had come. Vex watched him go, then looked at Kira. "Time to leave," he said, "before anything else decides to wake up."